now I would start explaining the basics, and then let's sit together. If we have the time, we could also have Kinhin in between, and then do another question and answer session at the end. So, Zen workshop. Basically, what we will do is Zazen, which means sitting Zen. And Kinhin would be walking Zen. At your places, you have either a square cushion or a round cushion. Choose something that fits your body, your needs. I don't know if there's anybody who's practicing yoga. When you practice yoga, usually you have a flat mat. But then when you meditate, usually you don't have a cushion. But when you sit long, if you don't have a cushion, it becomes tiring for the hips. So if you sit for a long time, you tend to kind of sit like this, and also it's hard to get the knees on the floor. So without the cushion, it's easy to sit in this posture. It easily becomes a posture like this. And you don't have so much stability if you sit like this. By using a cushion, in the case of this one, you might also fold it in two. It raises your pelvis and thus straightens the back, and also it helps to get the knees on the floor. So this gives you much more stability. And you might realize that this posture probably also looks better, it feels better than if you sit like this. If you sit like this, the pelvis is kind of pointing backwards and your chin tends to move upwards like this. And that's actually the posture that we spend a lot of our days also when we sit on a chair at the desk and work at the computer. Often we sit in this posture, but this probably feels quite different. So the idea of, if possible, is to get the knees on the floor. And if you have flexible legs, ankles, you can also try at lifting one of your feet on top of the thigh of the other leg. So this is called half lotus posture, which might give you, if you can do it. If not, don't force yourself. Especially if you sit for longer stretches, we'll probably sit 20 minutes or so. It starts to hurt, so don't force yourself. But if you're comfortable with this, this gives you even more stability. And if you're very flexible, maybe you've been practicing Zen already, or you've been practicing yoga, you can also try this. This is the so-called full lotus posture. So in this case, both feet are resting on the opposite thighs. But, first time today?
Well, I do yoga.
You do yoga. Okay. So that explains a little bit. Well, sometimes people they can do it at once without yoga, without Zen. But if you have no experience with Zen and yoga and you feel it's impossible to do it, don't try to do it. Over the years, with some practice and stretching, it gets easier. But you don't have to do it tonight if you don't want to. But this is the so-called full lotus posture, and often you see Buddha statues sitting like this. So you can also have the so-called Burmese posture where the legs are on the floor. That's completely okay. Or in Japan, there's a posture called seiza, where you kneel, and you can use the cushion to make this kneeling posture for you easier. So this would be another option to sit with the knees on the floor, and you don't have the same stability left and right. But for some people, this is much easier. And of course, as another option, we also have chairs in the back. So fold your legs and about the spine. I said that if the pelvis is bent a little bit forward, probably also the chin, rather than being moved upwards like this, it helps the chin to move backwards, the back of the neck to stretch. Something that might be worth mentioning here is often when we hear you're supposed to sit with a straight back. We make an extra effort to stretch the back and the neck. And in the beginning, it might not be a bad idea to check your posture, and if you realize, oh, actually, I'm sitting not so straight, to consciously, how do you say, adjust your posture. But you shouldn't make this extra effort. I want 1 millimeter higher and higher and higher. But rather, I usually use the metaphor of a grass growing in the spring. So the grass that was hidden in the winter comes out back in the spring and then by itself is growing upwards towards the sky. And in a way, it's the same with the spine. The spine that often during the days like this, you allow it to grow by itself, but you don't force it up or you don't pull it by force. You don't press it out, but you allow your spine to grow by itself. You allow the neck to stretch itself. And if you can feel, oh, this feels actually much better than this, then that's great. So find this point where from your, how do you say Bithekutsu in English? Steißbein? Steißbein?
Sacrum.
The sacrum? So from the sacrum upwards, allow your spine to grow and stretch itself. Also make sure that your shoulders are not stiff. If you have this attitude of, I want to stretch, I need to stretch, then your shoulders might get stiff. But the shoulders are completely relaxed, and also the intestines. In some traditions of yoga, you close the bandha and pull the intestines upwards. That's what I learned in Ashtanga yoga. But in Zen, it's more the opposite. So you let them drop. And your belly might even extend a little bit. So rather than make a kind of, how do you say, cool looking belly by contracting and moving upwards here, it's the opposite. You allow to have a kind of, some of the Chinese Buddha statues, they have this big belly. So of course you don't have to do it by force, but if the intestines drop, then your belly might expand a little bit. The hands, if you have your legs up here because you sit in half or full lotus, you put them on top of the foot. Otherwise, just put them here in your lap. The right hand first and the left hand on top of the right hand with the thumbs slightly touching. And the elbows not stretched out so much, but the elbows being a little bit separate from the upper body. About the breath, we use abdominal breathing. And, well, human beings inhale and exhale. And I don't know which is first. Well, some people say babies, when they are born, they cry. So exhalation comes first. But I'm not quite sure about that because the lungs are probably empty when they're born. So first they need to inhale. The reason why I say that often, for example, also in yoga, you say inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. While in Zen, it's more like exhale, 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 and then you inhale. Of course, these two belong together, but the emphasis is a little bit more on the exhalation. Letting go, completely letting everything go out. You completely exhale, and while you exhale, your belly contracts. And at the end of the exhalation, sometimes there's half a second or so where there's complete stillness, but then you breathe in again through the nose, if possible, without making that kind of noise that I just made. So it's not a kind of inhalation, but it's a quiet exhalation followed by a quiet inhalation. And usually when you sit and you calm down, your exhalation becomes longer and deeper, but you don't have to force it. You don't have to try to forcefully breathe long and deep. But, well, if it becomes long and deep, that's a good sign, and you might, well, enjoy that breath. Next comes the mind. So traditionally you talk about adjusting the body, adjusting the breath, and finally adjusting the mind. Many people think that this is probably the most difficult part of it, but also the most important thing. And that's not completely wrong, but it would be a mistake to think that the physical posture and the breath are only secondary, and the real work is with the mind. You could even say it's the other way around. Once the body is adjusted and your breath flows naturally, all of the work is done. There's nothing more you need to worry about. Actually, everything is done there. You don't have to do anything with the mind. The problem is that the mind will be very active, even though you might at first expect the opposite. You might expect, well, we're meditating. Our mind is supposed to calm down. Your mind will be very active and do a lot of things to gain your attention. A little bit like a small child, a 2 or 3-year-old child that needs the attention of her mother or his father. Your mind tries to get your attention, and I sometimes compare it to sheep on a meadow. The mind is like the meadow, and now, out of a sudden, you hear all these sheep, meh, 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 all want your attention. But you came here to meditate. You came here to let go of all these thoughts and emotions and stuff that comes up. Like, what I want to do, what will I eat for dinner? What's my plan for the weekend? What will I do next week? Or yesterday that guy told me this and that. He has no right to tell me that. Next time I meet him, I will tell him that. But if I say this, maybe he will answer that way. So before you know it, although you're still sitting here, your mind is in this conversation with this imaginary guy that annoys you. Or you're already preparing in your mind dinner. Your mind, most of the time, is all over the place, but not here. It's basically the sheep getting your attention, and you're riding far away with the sheep. So you have the idea that in Zazen, I need to be the shepherd. I need to tell the sheep to calm down, to be quiet. And when you look at the sheep, you realize there's white sheep, there's black sheep, and you think, I need to separate them. The black ones and the white ones. You build fences around the sheep. But the more you do that, the wilder the sheep get, and they jump over the fence, they mix again. They don't listen to you when you tell them to shut down. And at the end of the day, you might shout, if you not quiet now, I will make mincemeat out of you. I will make mincemeat out of you. If at that moment you take a, how do you say, neutral look, what's happening on the meadow, who would you say is causing the most trouble? Is it that white sheep or that black sheep? No, it's the shepherd. So the first thing we need to learn in Zazen is stop playing the shepherd. It's not about controlling our mind, or some of you might have heard about empty mind in Zen. And so you realize, I'm sitting here, but my mind is not empty. I need to somehow empty my mind. Don't think, don't think, don't think. And you're thinking about not thinking. I need to stop thinking. When you tell yourself that, you're already playing the shepherd. So the first step you can do is take the position of the sky. Don't take the position of the shepherd, but imagine that you look down on the meadow from the perspective of the sky. And you still see the sheep. Maybe you still see the shepherd there. And they make a lot of noise. But the moment you stop controlling them, the moment you stop trying to exert some kind of control, everything gets much more relaxed. So basically, you take a step backwards. You look at your mind from a distance without identifying with all these things that you see there. One example I sometimes use, imagine you are Mount Rokko and you're looking down on the city of Kobe, and maybe far away you see Osaka. You see Universal Studios Japan there. You see the JR moving. You see the Hanshin moving, Hankyu, lots of trains moving. But Rokko isn't moving. You allow all these things to move. And of course, cars moving on the highway. There's a lot of motion in the city of Kobe. But you don't ride in the train, you don't ride in the car. And that's what usually our mind does. Like when you remember this thing that he told you yesterday. Your mind is already jumping on it and you're going far away. But in Zazen, you don't have to stop the thoughts. It's just that you stop riding on them. You do not allow them to take you away. And returning to this practice, so probably from now on when we sit, it will happen all over and over again that thoughts appear, emotions appear, and before you realize it, your mind gets carried away by those, but not for 10 or 20 minutes. In between, you will realize, I was thinking. When this happens, this realization, I was thinking, don't blame yourself or don't tell yourself, oh, I wasted 3, 4, 5 minutes of Zazen. I made a mistake. But rather be happy that you have had this realization, because in that moment, you're back here, in this moment. When you realize you're thinking, you're not lost in the thoughts. When you're lost in the thoughts, you don't realize you're thinking. So the realization, I was thinking, brings you back into this moment. Unfortunately, 30 seconds later, 1 minute later, you're back again in the thoughts. You're lost again. But one thing that can help you is to stay with the breath. That won't work perfectly all of the time, but if the temptation to go with the thoughts is very strong, just follow your breath. When you breathe out and then you breathe in again, helps you to stay here. Or to focus on the physical posture, on the feeling. For example, your thumbs touching each other lightly, or the sensation of your thumbs. Also, often in meditation you close your eyes. I forgot to explain that in Zen we keep them half open. So there's also the visual perception. And maybe some people in the beginning thinks it's a kind of disturbance that the trains are passing every couple of minutes. But actually, the nice thing about this room is every couple of minutes the trains also bring you back into the here and now. So those are things that bring you back out of the world of the thoughts into this actual, real world. The breath, the physical sensations, the sound of the trains, and what you can see, although there's really not much to see now. And one thing that you don't have to worry about too much, but that I sometimes also explain, once you get a feeling for how it feels to be the sky, not the shepherd, but the sky, there's another step which would be to come back down again from the sky and become the meadow itself. The difference between the sky perception and being the meadow is, as the sky, there's a huge distance. I'm not the sheep. I'm not the shepherd. Nothing over there is really me. While becoming the meadow, all of that is you, all of that is me, and you allow the sheep to trample on you. You allow the sheep to feed from you, and you allow the sheep to take a dump on you at the end of the day. And you say, well, that would be actually Daishin. Please, do whatever you want with me. You don't take refuge over the clouds. But in the beginning, it can be very liberating to experience also this place over the clouds. I don't have to be the shepherd. So if you have difficulties getting a sense of what I mean by becoming the meadow, try the sky perspective first. Or imagine I'm Mount Rokko and I'm looking down on the city of Kobe. And there's lots of motion down there, but I'm not moving. I'm just sitting still here. Any questions about what I just explained? No questions? You know what to do? Basically, just don't do anything. You don't have to do anything. Before we sit, probably, as you said already for quite a while, let's stand up and stretch our legs. And I can also explain about Kinhin. So I would like to sit 2 times, and in between we do a small walking meditation. Let's walk in a square, like here, and maybe we can move this. Don't need this. Then go in this direction. And here, maybe in this direction, and like this. So there's this square here. And I said, well, we walk, but actually in my school, we say we take half a step with each breath. And usually I move my foot when I start to breathe out. So with the beginning of the breathing out, I move my foot, and then while I breathe out, I slowly move my weight from my back foot to the foot that's in front. And at the end of the expiration, when I breathe in, I lift the foot that's behind, and with the start of the next expiration, I move it forward. And now, while slowly breathing out, I move my weight from the foot that's behind to the one that's in front. And with the next inhalation, I lift this foot and move it. So we are hardly moving at all. It's very slow. And so we're walking one after the other, but each of us has different size of the foot, and also we have a different rhythm of breathing. So try to keep the distance, if possible, constant. And you can do that by, if your breath is faster than the others, you can make smaller steps. So you can also make baby steps like this. Or if your breath is very slow, you can make bigger steps. So that ideally the distance between you and the person before you stays the same. So please make yourself comfortable. Stretch your legs if you like. We still have some time, so if you have questions or anything that you would like to share, now would be the time to do so. Yes, please.
A comment you made last time has come back to me a few times about, again, we're getting back to food, but you stressed during the eating that the idea was not to individualize yourself, you know, you're part of a machinery, that you're all in sync, you know, you're eating at the same time, you're getting finished. And you had one fellow monk who did the 30 times chewing and took his time. And I'm wondering, well, you didn't mention how was that resolved, or everybody just sat there and meditated while he finished, or was there advice given to him to speed up? How to resolve a situation where you're not in sync like that?
It depends. Sometimes you would say it right on the spot. Sometimes you would maybe say it after the meal. Maybe next time you could be a little bit more aware of your surroundings. Or in some cases you might just wait, hoping that the person would realize it by themselves. Depends on the case and on the person. But probably in most cases somebody would say something at a certain point. Not right at once, but at a certain point. Yeah.
That's in groups, you know, I belong to a loose sangha out of Canada, and this kind of feedback is a huge point, you know.
Yes.
How to do it compassionately, when to do it, how many should be checking with others to make sure that what you want to say to this person is in fact valid, and so on. It's a big deal. So I'm just curious what the Zen society has evolved around that kind of.
Yeah, I mean, probably in the West it's much more difficult because we're not so much used to be kind of this authoritarian way of, hey, that's not the way we do it here. We're not used to being addressed in that way. We don't enjoy being addressed in that way. While the Japanese have it much more, especially in the monastic context. Are used to that way of communicating much more. But then in Antaiji, usually it's kind of half Japanese and half Western people that live there, so you can't do it the traditional Japanese way. And you don't have to do it, but it makes it difficult because the problem that you just expressed is there. Like you feel that for the sake of the whole group, I need to say something, but I also want to do it in a way that's helpful to that one individual that's causing a small disturbance without even realizing it. And of course, he has no bad intentions or she, but how can I communicate it? And sometimes it works somehow and sometimes it doesn't work. I mean, often you realize, oh, I didn't do it in a skillful way. That's the word we usually use in the scene, skillful way. But often it doesn't work out. But yeah, you have to accept that as well. Like in Antaiji, there were quite a number of people that left because I told them something in a way that they didn't want to be told. But at the end of the day, my attitude, well, if you want to leave, the door is always open both sides. Like everybody's welcome to join if they want to come, but if you say no, I don't want to be treated this way, then the door is also open in the other direction. Yes.
I just wanted to mention that I found your example of the Roko Mountain and or being the sky and being the meadow.
Yes.
It reminded me of this experience when I Scotland,
Mm-hmm.
and from the United States. And when the plane was coming in for a landing, broke through the clouds, and it was actually a pretty sunny day, which is kind of rare for Edinburgh. And there's this green fields, meadows coming up. And I noticed that as you got closer, there were these like white dots
Mm-hmm.
on the green, and then I realized that they were sheep.
Mm.
And then, as the plane was coming in for approach, to the runway, and they started to spread out, the scatter and touch down. And so, it kind of helped me
Mm-hmm.
visualize, that abstract idea of kind of coming, being outside of the meadow and then
Mm-hmm.
descending into it and becoming the meadow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful.
I also felt like when you are outside, when you have the sky view and you go back to the meadow, you have more choices because you can choose which sheep you want to follow. When you don't step out, you are always like caught in a certain area of the meadow. So by your thoughts, by your emotions.
Like a wolf, you mean, trying to track the...
Trying to pick out the slowest one.
How was it for the ones who said for the first time? Okay?
Yeah, nice.
Yes.
Yes, well, it was very nice, but it's really difficult not to think about anything.
Yeah. Especially when you try, you're already thinking about not thinking. Yeah. So in Zen, we talk a lot about letting go. And when you say letting go, people imagine that you kind of get rid of something. But I often make the point of saying letting go means basically the same as accepting. Or maybe you could say in English, let it be. So to let go of thoughts doesn't mean that you erase the thoughts, but you accept there are thoughts. Just like this example that you need to accept when you look from the mountain down at Kobe City. The trains are moving, cars are moving, people are moving. You can't stop them from moving. But, the point is you accept that, but you're not moved by it, basically. So you allow thoughts to be there, emotions to be there. For example, sometimes it's strong emotions like fear, or pain can happen when you sit for a long time. There's this pain. But like being in the position of the sky means that there's pain or there's fear, there's anger. But at one point you realize, but I'm not angry. There's anger there, but it's not my anger there anymore. And I don't have to erase it. Or the fear, there's fear there. And it's okay. There's kind of the small version of the Muho, and he's in fear. But then there's a different version that's completely okay. It's a little bit like this parental mind that you're in the position of the mother of this small version of yourself that's in fear. But you say, it's okay, come here. It's okay. So it's not that you have to erase this frightened version of yourself or the angry version. You just say, okay, let's sit here together.
I'm interested in Peter's question about if someone, I guess I don't really know the scenario that you're talking. Well, you gave the scenario of the person who's like chewing for too long, but I wonder in that, like with this sort of understanding of kind of acceptance of a situation, or of like things that maybe cause discomfort or fear. Because when I hear this instance of like the person who's chewing for too long, I wonder, like, and you said that sometimes you wait it out, you see if that person changes. And I guess I'm curious about why the default wouldn't be to wait, if there's this sort of philosophy of sort of like riding it out, or of kind of cultivating like a sort of ability to face whatever is presented. If that makes sense.
Why don't you make a default to wait it out? Like, I remember one instance where a meal that probably would have taken us 30 minutes normally, because one person was chewing very long, took us an hour or longer. And I waited it out in that moment because I thought, well, this might be a time where we can just wait it out. But if you make a default, for one thing, you don't always have the time. For the other thing is then that would become normal. People would suppose, well, it's normal that people wait for me. I can do it in Japanese. There's this word, my pace. Like I can do it my pace, and everybody needs to wait for me. I have a right that everybody wait for me. And I don't think that would be a good attitude to develop for people. That, oh, people will wait for me anyway. That's the default. Rather, I want people to sooner or later develop an attitude where they also look around, well, how can I fit in, or what does the group need from my side? And at the end of the day, you have only 24 hours, so waiting it out isn't always an option.
So it's sort of like there's like an element of like routine or schedule in like Zen.
Yes.
Right. That
Yes.
has to be sort of maintained.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Can I add? That,
Yes.
You know, after lunch, you wash the dishes, and then you have some rest. And this is the rare moment that you have some time for rest, or for yourself, or for work, for anything. I mean, someone will make 1 hour instead of half an hour of lunch. You lose this, everyone loses this half an hour of their own time, which also is not so appreciated.
That makes sense.
Anything else you would like to ask or share?
You know, when I started to talk, you know, when you talk about the thoughts and what to do with the thoughts. My teacher, my first teacher, he sometimes said, well, just don't invite them for coffee. Don't entertain them.
Yes, yes, yes.
You know, just let them go. Yeah.
Yeah, with the most thoughts, actually, well, it's only the entertaining part that keeps them alive. I mean, there's other things like fear also that can be really there for a long stretch of time, even though you don't entertain it. But with this intellectual stuff, if you don't entertain it, like for example, somebody told you something and you were really angry, but then you don't think about it. Well, this thought comes up, the memory comes up, but then you don't think about what you will tell him the next time you meet it. It's going to disappear. While serving a coffee would be done, well, maybe next time I will tell him this, but then he might say this, but then I will. That's kind of the coffee thing. And that's, well, what we do a lot of the time.
Having coffee with an imaginary friend.
Yeah, or enemy, yeah. Friend. Yeah.
Was the first time here?
Yeah.
Die Pünktchen werden allmählich alle scharfen und so. Diese Version habe ich sehr schön gefunden.
Mm.
Aber ursprünglich interessierte mich, warum Sie sich dieses Buddhismus und mit Ihrer Praktikum, also
Bei mir?
Osteopathie und sowas.
Das kann ich später erzählen.
Ah ja. Ja, aber ich habe wirklich eine schöne Erfahrung gemacht. Vielen herzlichen Dank.
Anything else you would like to ask or share?
No. Okay. No, I don't have a question.
Sorry. I just had a question about, I guess the transcentive state that I think, or not think, but I think that I'm experiencing is kind of, you said, like your mind think, and is it kind of feels like a white noise. Like when you have a radio on static and there's no station, it's just. But it doesn't actually sound like that. I'm just saying, it's kind of, and I'm wondering, if if it's a good idea to just kind of, okay, just let things, just think it out, let your brain think as much as it wants until it finally just goes, and is that really a good strategy to get to that?
Yeah, I mean, let it think out. It's like a little bit like digestion, or I sometimes use the metaphor like you take off the lid of a pot and let all of the steam come up and all the smell. It's just that you should refuse to stir in there and kind of look, what can I find in there? So you don't stir in there, but you allow all of that stuff that comes up that wants to come out. And it can be sometimes a lot. And the temptation to kind of, to stir or to serve coffee to these thoughts is very great. But as long as you don't do that, you allow all of this white noise or whatever the noise, the meh of the sheep to happen. And sometimes it can go on for a whole half an hour, but usually after a while it quiets down. And if it doesn't quiet down, that's also okay. Then some stuff comes back and back and back, and each time you think about whatever, when you were 13 years old and you were bullied in school, and you will think always about this bully, but even that, if you allow that memory to come back and back and back, but you don't do anything with it, at one point it's digested. At one point it digests itself. But some things take a longer time, and other things, the moment you stop serving it coffee, it disappears.
I think it's very different from the psychotherapy point of view. No? So because there you would think about why and what happened and rethink everything. And this is just like very different, and so it's so surprising maybe so people can work out like this too.
Well, yeah, you don't work with it, you just let it go through, so to speak. You don't have to analyze it or ask for the meaning. What could that mean? Just allow it to pass through. So it's a little bit like these trains. You don't have to stop the trains, but you don't ride in the train either. You just let them pass and pass and pass. And time after midnight, probably they're gonna stop. But then the next morning they start again.
As far as writing out the thoughts, I did some Vipassana 10-day retreats, and day 5, maybe it quiets down.
Yes,
4
yes,
or 5, so that's
yeah,
it's 8 hours a day.
yeah.
So it's not easy to let it write it out.
Yeah. Often the third day is the hardest. Like, of course, it starts on day 1, but often the third day is like this white now is but then it quiets down. Yeah, quiets down. We already decided next time April
Yes, also April 16th. It's a
16th, a Friday again.
Yeah, again a Friday, 4:30 to 6:30. Muho-san will be here with us again. If you liked it, please join again. And as usual, we have a little donation box downstairs, so you can donate for Muho. And Muho, thank you so much for coming again.
Thank you for coming, for having me. And if you have topics for next time, you can also.
But I found that so.
Yeah.
Like your study question was so nice, so
Yeah.
easy and deep. So
Yeah,
so
yeah.
simple and deep. So both at the same time.
So in April, of course, on the spot you can ask things, but if you have things in advance, you can also mail either Didier or me, and I will try to prepare something.
Thank you very much for your.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you want, you can have another drink here also.